Hi, my name is Steven and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be talking to you about how to handle loss of control, how to manage it, and how to deal with it. So I don't think I've met a single person that likes being out of control in their life. For most, if not all people, want to be more in control of their life. This is ingrained to us as humans to want more control over our domain and life, and to try to make some sense into all the chaos surrounding us. Each one of us tries to influence control within our own worlds and the people in it. But what happens when you lose that control, either to personal decisions or external factors? How do we manage that and ultimately move on from being out of control? I've gone through a lot in the past couple of months with the birth of my child and all the milestones that I've reached. In each one of those milestones, I've lost a little bit of control along the way. This gradual loss of control and eventually giving up control has not been easy on me. But I've been learning and adapting to more things that are out of my control and being at ease with it. This not only had a positive impact on how I react to things when I lose control, but also my stress levels as well. And as you'll see, you'll notice some of the tips that I used to be able to manage that out of controlness. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about my background, my guide to handling loss of control, and my general thoughts. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, hit that notification bell if you like this content. And let's go. When we talk about loss of control, I'm talking about something in your life that you have domain over or control over that thing. It's usually something that we mastered in our lives and are comfortable with how it's going so far. This can be a relationship dynamic, your structure at work, or how you treat your friends. Something that you know very well and rely on constantly for your life support. But then over a short period of time, you don't have that control or mastery over something anymore. Some examples of this could be job loss, changing responsibilities at home, or some external factors that affect your personal life. Depending on the severity of this loss of control, it can impact your place in society, your personal belonging, and your future goals. And crucially, that might impact how you view yourself and your confidence going forward. So it is a big deal when you lose control of something in your life. Although in my life, the loss of control was manageable and expected, I've still had problems letting go and accepting the new dynamic of the situation. And I think in general, that's also the case for others as well, going through that transition. Over the past couple of months, I slowly had to learn to accept being out of my control and being okay with that. And then ultimately, seeking control is a form of prison in and of itself. Because at the end of the day, the more things that you want to control, the more you're going to drive up your stress and anxiety. It then becomes a negative feedback loop that increases your stress and anxiety the more you want to control something. Especially if whatever you're trying to control doesn't want to be controlled. So ultimately, there's a few things that I kept in mind and had to remind myself when I found myself losing control of something. And how to manage and deal with the aftermaths of it. So here's my guide on handling loss of control. Number 1, acknowledgement. The first step in dealing with loss of control is realizing that you have a problem with letting go. When we do not acknowledge that we have a problem, we're never going to be able to fix it or manage it in the first place. And we're going to struggle more with the feelings and emotions that stem from loss of control. In essence, we might lash out and behave differently towards the thing we're trying to control, and not recognize that it's a feeling that we can control within our own selves and not externally. I, for the longest time, had a problem with acknowledging that there was an issue in the first place. I did not want to accept that I had a problem with loss of control, because when something was being taken away from me or I lost control of that, I would behave very differently, and I would not react well to that, sometimes lashing out in anger, because I couldn't acknowledge that I was losing control and I didn't want to accept the outcome of it. In the end, to move past loss of control, you have to acknowledge and accept it. Because if you resist against it, it will be just another barrier for you to not being able to move on. And it resides in each one of us to accept it and move on from it. For this tip, if you don't have something that's currently a loss of control, you might have to look into the past for examples and reflect on how you reacted to those situations and whether or not you could have improved on your reaction. And keep that reaction in mind for the future when you're experiencing a loss of control of something new. You'll be able to at least predict how you're going to react to something based on your past experiences and try to course correct at that time. So acknowledgement is the first key in your journey to accepting and moving on from loss of control. Number 2, reflection. Once you realize that you've gone through a loss of control and acknowledge the situation, then you move on to reflection of it. This can be a very difficult and time-consuming process based on how connected you were to trying to control something. Basically, the key is to reflect, process, and work through your emotions and feelings about it. Because yes, you did lose control of that one thing. Now it's time to move towards acceptance of it. This is the phase where you're adjusting to the new normal of that situation. And sometimes it might take a long time for you to settle into that new normal. But not only that, you might go through some up and down periods about that situation as well. For example, in some cases, you might actually agree that loss of control is good for you, and other days, you'll be sorry that it went through in the first place. When I've gone through this myself in the past, I journal as much as I can and take long walks. This helps me to facilitate my processing of that situation and help me get to a better place. These steps are not only there to help me to calm down from it, but also to help me plan my next steps. Many of the times when I've gone through a loss of control, it's something that I planned and didn't go according to plan, which then cascades and throws off my other plans that I had in work. I learned that these are things that will always happen in life and that you should expect it. But getting to that place required a lot of reflection within myself to accept that some circumstances are just out of my control. As you work through your own loss of control, take time and reflect on that situation and get yourself in a good mental headspace so that you can ultimately move on from it. Again, this might take you some time, but the sooner you get to it, the better it'll be. So reflect on that loss to eventually move on. Number 3, acceptance. The hardest part of losing control is to finally gain that acceptance of it, and not to do anything to try to fix that situation. This is the time in which you say to yourself, I accept it and I'm ready to move on. Although in some cases there can be false acceptances, in which you think you accepted the situation but ultimately still have resentment towards it. This just means that you haven't reflected or taken enough time to process it. I think my successes in accepting loss of control largely stems from how emotionally tied in I was to that control. The greater the emotional or mental involvement, the harder it was for me to accept it. The one thing that ultimately kept me moving forward was the idea that humans are infallible and always make mistakes. And because humans are not perfect, the structures, systems, and plans in place are also not perfect. We are all just imperfect beings doing our best in this world. So really, acceptance of loss of control in life comes down to nobody's perfect. And we should work to accept the turbulent ride that is our life. Whether we go on high highs or low lows, sometimes at the end of our lives, it ultimately doesn't matter. And that most of the things in our lives can be course corrected with little effort. So once you accept that loss of control, you can truly move on from it. Number 4, reprioritize. One of the ways that we can take our minds off of and move on from loss of control is to reprioritize to something else. That means shifting focus to something that is more in your control. And you can give it more attention to where it's actually needed. For example, say you lost a lot of responsibility at work. Maybe then you can reprioritize on focusing that extra time towards your family. When we lose something in our lives, we can look at it optimistically and reprioritize to something else more important in our lives. And this act of deeper focus on something else can also help you to forget about the thing that you lost control over. In the depths of last year, I was fighting multiple fires and I was getting buried and stressed over them. The more I tried to manage and control, the more things would get out of control and stress me out. But the thing was, when I lost control of something for good, I just reprioritized to something else that needed my attention. And that meant overall, I had less things that required my focus and attention on. This made me feel a lot better because I had less things on my plate. As hard as it can be at times, when we lose control of something, it is an opportunity in and of itself. Especially if we reprioritize to something else that we can focus on. Because this can give us the emotional and mental break needed to get our minds off of that other thing. And also it can help us give us time to reflect on what truly is important to us. So reprioritizing to something else after a loss of control can be very beneficial to you. And number 5, awareness. Lastly, we have to keep in mind that we can experience a loss of control at any point in our lives. Awareness of this situation can benefit you and help you speed through the above 4 tips. And over time, you'll be able to move on from loss of control even faster. This means that you can get through reflection, acceptance, and reprioritization much faster with that extra awareness. Because the fact of the matter is, there's always something that's gonna be outside of our control at some point within our lives. It's just expected. There is no perfect plan and there is no perfect human being on this planet. In the hours after my child was born, I slowly came to the realization that I no longer had the freedoms that I did before. And also the time that I had to self-care and other activities just wasn't going to be there because of the time demands of a family. As each one of these losses of control hit me, I was able to manage each subsequent loss of control much better than before. Because I had that awareness and I got the process in my head efficiently. And ultimately, I just knew that this wasn't the end of my loss of control. So keep in mind that with every experience of loss of control that you have, you're getting better and more efficient at processing it, managing it, and effectively getting over it. And you'll be able to handle it much better in any instances of this in the future. So here are my general thoughts on how to handle loss of control. During the reflection period, it can be extremely difficult to process loss of control. The ups and downs that you might go through from this might take a very long time. And for some people, they might never get over that loss of control. And you also should be aware of the fact that you could also never get over that loss of control yourself. For example, getting fired from your dream job or losing out on the love of your life. In those moments, I try to refocus and reprioritize to what's really important in my life, and use that to help carry me through that trying or difficult time. Talking to others about your own loss of control can be also very beneficial in order for you to process it. It's a good emotional and mental release that some people might need. At the end of the day, total control of something is just not possible. And to try to control something that can't be controlled might be very silly. But in those cases, keep in mind your overall sanity and mental health. Because at the end of the day, managing your loss of control is very important for your well-being going forward into the future. Because at some point, it might happen to you again. So that's my guide on how to handle and manage loss of control. In our busy lives, we are often needed to exert some form of control over our environment, to make sure that aspects within our lives run smoothly and according to plan. That control can make us feel better and boost our confidence within this world. But if we have that loss of control, we can feel lost, directionless, and without purpose. But with a few key tips in mind, you can ultimately learn how to manage and deal with the loss of control in your life. Life is chaos, and learning to be okay with that chaos is just another step in maturing. So thank you for watching. Please leave me a comment down below on what are your thoughts on loss of control and how do you deal with it. And I'll see you next time.